My father-in-law, Richard, wired $200,000 into my business account with a two-word text. Family helps. No paperwork, no contract. Just a lifeline thrown to my drowning restaurant in the bleak spring after the pandemic mandates lifted. I cried with relief. A year later, he called the loan. The supply chain was still a nightmare, my reserves were gone. I begged for time. He was sympathetic, fatherly. I wish I could, son, but my own position is tight. Let's just look at the terms we agreed to. Terms? We hadn't agreed to any, but the document his lawyer emailed me 10 minutes later had my signature on it. A signature I'd put on a stack of insurance and tax updates he'd brought over one night, telling me to trust him. It's boilerplate. That boilerplate wasn't a loan agreement. It was a convertible note and a shareholder voting agreement. By missing two payments, the $200,000 debt had automatically converted into a 51% controlling stake in my company. He didn't want his money back. He wanted my business. The hostile takeover wasn't launched by a corporate raider. It was executed at my own kitchen table by a man who called me son, and it was finalized on a Tuesday morning when a process server handed me a notice of a special board meeting where the new majority shareholder, my father-in-law, voted to remove me as CEO. Family doesn't just help, sometimes it acquires. The oak and anchor was my life. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was the physical embodiment of my father's dream, a dream I inherited when he passed too young. I poured my inheritance, my sweat, my soul into transforming the old, failing pub into a modern gastropub with a locally sourced menu. For 5 years, it worked. We were a destination. Then the world stopped. The lockdowns shattered us. We survived on takeout and PPP loans that barely covered the rent. When we reopened, everything had changed. Costs soared. Customers were cautious. We were bleeding out. My wife, Chloe, was my rock, but the stress was fracturing us. Her father, Richard, was a different breed. A retired private equity executive, he was all sharp suits, cold logic, and quiet judgment. He never approved of a son-in-law in the unstable restaurant business. His help, when offered, always came with a lecture about business plans and ROI. So when he showed up unannounced one night, took a quiet booth, and saw the despair on my face, his response was uncharacteristic. No lecture, just a firm hand on my shoulder. This is family. We don't let family fail. 2 days later, the $200,000 hit my account. No strings, he said over the phone. Get back on your feet. Pay me back when you can. We're family. I was overwhelmed with a gratitude so deep it felt like shame. I'd misjudged him. He was my savior. A few weeks later, he came by with a manila folder. Just some mundane stuff, Ben. For my accountant, insurance rider updates, a tax election for the business structure, boring legal things to keep you protected. Sign where the tabs are. It was thick. I was in the weeds with a broken dishwasher and a missing delivery. I trusted him. He was family. He just saved us. I flipped to the yellow sticky notes and signed, barely glancing at the pages. That was my second mistake. My first was believing that to a man like Richard, family was an emotional bond and not a column on a balance sheet to be leveraged. The first year was a struggle. But the loan gave us breathing room. We adapted. Richard would check in, offering advice that felt more like directives. Fire your expensive head chef. Switch to cheaper distributors. I'd politely push back, defending my vision. Attention grew, polite but icy. Then the supply chain crisis hit. The cost of our signature dry-aged beef tripled. A key brewer went under. Our margins evaporated. I missed the first quarterly payment to Richard, a payment we'd never formally scheduled. I called him, apologetic. Richard, things are brutal. I need to defer. His voice was smooth. Understood, Ben. Just keep me updated. The next month, I missed again. This time, his response was different. We need to talk about the structure of our arrangement. My lawyer will send over the documents. The documents were the ones I'd signed. But now, highlighted and annotated by his lawyer, they told a different story. The core document was a convertible promissory note. Buried in Clause 4.2 was the trigger. Upon the occurrence of a payment default, 2 consecutive missed quarterly payments, the entire principal and accrued interest shall, at the holder's option, automatically convert into equity shares representing 51% of the fully diluted ownership of the borrower. He had the option. And he exercised it. With a click of his lawyer's mouse, my father-in-law went from lender to majority owner. But it was the second document that was the masterpiece of treachery. A shareholder voting agreement. By signing it, I had agreed that in the event of a change of control or management dispute, all shareholder votes would be decided by a board of directors consisting of 3 members: Richard, his lawyer, and a third party he appointed. I had legally voted away my own voice. I was a 49% owner with 0% control. I called him, screaming, "You set me up, this is theft." His reply was calm, corporate. "Benjamin, you signed binding legal documents. You defaulted. These are the consequences. This isn't personal, it's business. And frankly, your emotional approach to this business is why it's failing. I'm stepping in to protect my asset and my daughter's future." He'd already reframed my life's work as his asset. And he'd wrapped his greed in the flag of protecting Chloe. The special board meeting was a farce. It was held in Richard's austere downtown office. The board was Richard, his lawyer, and a silent, grim-faced consultant I'd never met. I was allowed to attend as a minority shareholder. The sole agenda item: removal of chief executive officer and appointment of interim management. Richard cited my payment default, declining operational performance, and strategic incoherence. He voted his shares. The lawyer voted as proxy for my shares, a power granted in the voting agreement. The consultant voted with Richard. It was unanimous. I was fired from my own company, effective immediately. Security escorted me from my restaurant that afternoon. My staff watched in stunned silence. I hired a lawyer, a pit bull named Mara who specialized in corporate fraud. She reviewed the documents. "It's predatory, but it's airtight," she said. "He's a professional. The convertible note is a common venture capital instrument, but it's brutal for a distressed small business. The voting agreement is a coup d'etat on paper. Your only angle is fraud in the inducement, that he tricked you into signing something fundamentally different than what he represented. We needed proof he'd called it insurance paperwork. I had none. It was my word against his. Chloe was torn apart. She confronted her father. He gave her a performance of wounded pride. I saved him, he failed. I'm protecting your family's financial security from his incompetence. He's turning you against me because he can't accept his own failure. He was a master manipulator, isolating me." My marriage strained under the weight of it. Mara devised a Hail Mary. We subpoenaed Richard's financial records and emails. We discovered he'd been quietly acquiring the commercial real estate debt on our building through another shell company. He didn't just want the business. He wanted the property. His plan was to take over, strip the assets, sell the concept, and redevelop the prime real estate. The loan was never about help. It was the cost of acquiring a development site and crushing a son-in-law he'd always looked down on, all in one move. We didn't win in court. We won in the court of public opinion and family destruction. Mara leaked the story to the local business journal. Local restaurant hijacked in family loan shark scheme. The article detailed the convertible note, the secret property acquisitions, and featured quotes from my devastated staff. Our community, who loved the oak and anchor, revolted. They boycotted. Protesters with "Boycott the Takeover" signs stood outside. Richard, the private man, hated the spotlight. The bad press was toxic to his other ventures. He made an offer to settle. He would sell the business back to me for $1, under the condition I assume the original $200,000 debt, now with a formal, reasonable repayment schedule. And he would drop all claims. But there was a catch. Chloe had to sign a prenuptial agreement, forfeiting any future claim to his estate. And we had to publicly recant the false narrative and call it a business misunderstanding. He was using my wife's inheritance as a final bargaining chip. It was the cruelest cut. Chloe looked at the document, then at her father. For the first time, she saw not her dad, but the predator. She refused to sign. "My family is here," she told him. "Not in your will. We took the deal on the business but refused the prenup. We got the oak and anchor back, but it was a shell. The debt is crippling. The staff's trust is broken. The magic is gone. Richard is out of our lives. We see him at forced family functions, a cold, silent statue. He didn't get Chloe's inheritance, and he lost his daughter. I got my business back, but it feels like a battlefield I'm presiding over, not a dream. He taught me a brutal lesson. In the world of men like Richard, there are no family loans. There are only acquisitions waiting to happen, and sentiment is the weakest currency of all. This story is a minefield for any entrepreneur. So I'm asking you, what are your non-negotiable rules for taking money from family? Would you ever sign anything without your own lawyer present, regardless of who's asking? Debate the safeguards in the comments. And if you know a small business owner, tag them, share this. This isn't just a family drama, it's a masterclass in predatory finance. The most dangerous terms aren't in the interest rate, they're in the conversion clauses and voting agreements. Read every line, especially the ones handed to you with love.